welcome back to In the Zone. Rich Sutter, Pete Coles, dynamic duo of the basketball world. We're hoop gurus. We're bringing it to you straight. And we, ladies and gentlemen, right now are on the edge of March Madness. February coming to a close. Tournaments about to start. All of the elimination, the selection, the whole bracket, everything is going to be upon your doorstep, ladies and gentlemen. What we're aiming to do is get you ready for that bracket. Pete, what we're hoping to do here is just give some information on some teams that people that don't watch as much basketball as I do might not have seen. There are some teams out there that I've seen that are pretty good, that have a chance to make a tournament and make a significant run. I don't get caught up in 4, 8, 16, but good teams out there that are really, really capable. Right now, the top is taking shape of the NCAA as well as the top is taking shape of the NBA, and that's going to be the theme of our show today. But for right now, ladies and gentlemen, we jump into Pete's Corner, the hottest segment of the show. Pete has three-pointers to hoist, throws them in my direction. We'll see if he makes a few today. He's been hot. He's been very, very hot.
All right, so I'm deep diving in the NIL. I've been doing some research on it. Who is this corporation or group called Teamwork that the NCAA is using to kind of be the broker for NIL and powering their NIL assist dashboard? You
got me on that one.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything about it. Why don't you illuminate what you've learned?
I've learned that they're the force behind getting it's kind of like the clearinghouse. This is what it seems like because I can't get into the actual portal or the NIL assist dashboard. I can look at some of the statistics from it, but I can't actually get in there. And what it does is allegedly, it is a place for the athletes and the potential NIL sponsors. What do you call them? Sponsors, advertisers,
the money.
Right, a place for them to meet up, and it's run by this group called Teamwork. And on the flip side of it, for female athletes only, Meta has entered the fray and is having several virtual workshops on how to get female athletes to build their brand. And it's exclusive to Meta. Now, I would think that the NCAA is somehow getting paid for all of this by both companies, which are, and Meta's enormous. I don't know about this other group, Teamwork. So I got to do some more digging on them, but I assume that they're getting paid somehow. I mean, you don't just do this for free. And what I've come up with is this dashboard, and this shows that from January of 2024, before it was started, to right now, the average disclosure value is $2,600 of disclosure money that they've done, and then the average total athlete earnings is $20,723. But over 55% of the deals per disclosure value range are between $0 and $100. So where's all this money going?
That's a really good question.
Where's it going? Football is the biggest. If you look in deals per sport, football is the biggest at 40%, followed by men's basketball at 11.2%, men's baseball at 11.2 as well, and then women's basketball at 7.7. Where's the money?
So I'll jump on this right now a little bit. About this is something I had planned for the show. It kind of piggybacks on what Pete's talking about. Pete says, where's the money? Okay. Here are the football numbers, Pete. Of the top 7, Texas, $22.2 million. Ohio State, $20.2 million. Only the football.
Wow.
LSU, $20.1 million. Georgia, $18.3. Texas A&M, $17.2. If you want to know how the drop is and how precipitous it is, Illinois is 25th, but they're at $9.3 million. So you see a drop from 22 all the way down to 9, only in the top 25. That's pretty precipitous. I think, there, we've talked about this on the show a lot, and we talked about the poor construction, the poor execution of the NIL, but some of that had to be by design, because these companies are starting up rather quickly in this whole format and seem to have already been in on this before it dropped, because you can't just start up these companies and all of a sudden now you're pulling it out of thin air. So it's going to be predatory, okay? And it's also going to create a situation where you now have made the NCAA into a pro league.
Oh, yeah.
Basketball and football.
Without a doubt.
Basketball and football. And I don't know if you caught that court thing that came out last week where they were doing some of the Office of Civil Rights was doing something, determining whether NIL was proper under Title IX requirements, with the women not really being included in this in a significant way. And your numbers right there, Pete, just showed that. So I think that's a problem. But the courts did say that the NCAA is not under an obligation to split that money fairly. So
that's the way they set it up.
It goes to, I think they're going to just point to revenue now. Right, that's how they set it up. That's exactly how they set it up. And so, it's a great question. There's so much here that you could do just a show on NIL. Go back to the court cases. Go back to how this whole thing hatched out of the egg, and then go back to the first people who started to abuse it before it became mainstream, took advantage of it, much like the guys who were on the wiretaps. Everybody's looking for an edge in this game. Really, it's sad. Honestly, very sad that people are always looking to tilt the playing field. Always.
I just found out if you change it just to football, the numbers jump. It almost doubles. There's the numbers if you just change it to just football. Everything doubles.
If you go back in our shows, I think this is our 94th show, but if you go back in our shows into the 30s and 40s when this was really coming out, we were talking about this. You and I alluded to this. This is a massive, massive transferal of wealth to football. This is football taking over the whole thing. They were allowed to kick the NCAA out years ago into Power 5 football, and now they're doing whatever they darn well please. And now they're talking about Cooper Flagg. He can stay in college because he's making as much money in college as he is in the pros. I don't know how that works with the companies that are sponsoring them, that we're hoping maybe to keep them as pro athletes. I think their value as a pro athlete to the company might be greater than it is as a college athlete. I think Cooper Flagg in the NBA has more value to Gatorade than he does at Duke, but that's just a guess of mine. Pete, great question. Let's go to number 2.
I'm just trying to figure out where the money's going. It boggles my mind when I started. It's almost as bad as politics, digging into this NIL crap.
Do you think it's built on the same model? I mean, we're talking about now they're finding massive waste, fraud, and abuse, just so the money can disappear. It's not waste, fraud, and abuse if it actually winds up in somebody's pocket.
Right.
That's something quite different.
Yep.
It's not waste, fraud, and abuse if somebody's taking it out the back door.
Right.
Yeah. It's something much different. We've gotten used to calling it waste, fraud, and abuse, but when that money winds up somewhere it's not supposed to wind up, that's not waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah, that's theft.
That's exactly right. That's
All
exactly
right, question
right.
number 2. You're in the playoffs right now as a Division III school. How do you get your guys up when they know that, like Division I, Division II, their seasons go further? How do you engage them? Does that make any sense?
We have a tournament as well with a Sweet 16, Elite 8, and Final 4.
Okay.
Division III has all of those things. So our guys are really focused on our tournament in front of us, getting in there first off, and and just trying to close our season in good fashion. That's what you always want to do. You always want to look for that really, really couple of good games at the end. Right now it's down to 2 games, and whoever gets through those 2 games will be the champion of the league, move on to the NCAA tournament. So it's interesting. It's on the same format. Ours goes a little quicker because there's not as many teams.
Not as many teams, right?
But it's,
and how
keeps our guys pretty focused. Our guys are pretty when you work as hard as you do in the gym Those practices are hard. Showing up sometimes early in the morning, getting on the bus at 7 o'clock to go travel to a game, that's not that easy, you know? And so when you've worked that hard and invested something that deeply, you're going to want to see it through. You're going to want to see it through. So our guys are really focused on what we do. Yeah, they watch that other stuff. But I think the Division II guys are focused on their stuff. You live in your own bubble as far as that goes. You know, we watch the Division I stuff for entertainment. That's not really in our lives as basketball players and coaches. What's in our lives right now is who's up next in front of us.
And how, third question, how important is student engagement? Bringing the students in at this time of the year, having them come back from break, and just about you getting into tournament time. How important is student engagement to your players and to you?
Yeah, if you have home court advantage, it's huge. It's really, really big, you know, because you can get your students out and excited about those games. They'll be excited about championship games. They'll be excited about playoff games. So if you can get your gym packed and excited, you know, it creates an advantage. It's not a guarantee by any means. It's not a guarantor by any means. You know, at the end of the year, both teams are probably going to show up and play pretty well. The crowd is really going to help the home team, you know, maybe push through. But, you know, at our place, a couple of times that we've had it, our crowd's been absolutely sensational. And I'm hoping we can see some of that this week. We'll see. We'll see. But 3 great ones, Pete. 3 great ones. Let's move right into our NBA Power 15. It's a big segment of ours through the week. A lot happening in the NBA right now. Are the Lakers on the rise because of the Luka trade? Are the Mavericks on the decline because of the Luka trade? It certainly would seem that way. The Golden State Warriors, you know, are they on the rise because of the Jimmy Butler trade? And are the Miami Heat on the way down as a result of that trade? I think that's how you measure some of those things. But, Pete, the Cavaliers have, in WWE fashion, have wrestled the lead back from the OKC Thunder and have done it in fashion that they've been doing it all year. Solid basketball. Really, really good team play. They're 48-10 after 58 games, and that is something that's astonishing.
Who would have thunk it?
Very few people. If you're holding a ticket for the Cavaliers being the number 1 team in Vegas right now, you're holding a pretty good ticket. You're holding a ticket that's, you know, going to bring a lot of money to you if that turns out that way. OKC Thunder 46-11, right there. The Celtics are right there as well too, Pete. They're getting hot, playing very, very good basketball. And if you look at that 4th team right there, the Denver Nuggets, the hottest team in the NBA right now, they're starting to look like the team that everybody looked at in that championship season and saw them, and they're starting to look like that again. They've got a good win streak going, and they're playing very good basketball. They kind of knocked the Grizzlies down 1 notch there, but the Knicks and the Grizzlies are going to bounce back and forth there in that 5-6 mode. But the Lakers are climbing. The Lakers are climbing. They had a good, you know, they've had some head-scratching losses, so absolute head-scratching losses. But for the most part, they've done very well. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to get a good playoff seed if things continue. Right now, you know, you're looking at them being possibly the number 3 or 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Get them a little home court advantage. Maybe even get some rest for those old bodies that they got out there. But right now, I think Doncic has been a positive there for no question. All right, so again, you got the Lakers at 35-21. The Rockets have been right there all year, but they're starting to slip a little bit. Were they just elevated because they played great basketball in the beginning of the year and now coming down to their real kind of level? I don't know. Keep an eye on it. I'm very high on this team, but they're young. They're mercurial. And right now they're in a little bit of a doldrum. And you got the Pacers and the Bucks. Kind of been holding those spots almost all year. The Pacers have been really, really tight in the middle of the pack. The Bucks were down. The Cup brought them back. And now, you know, they're talking, you know, that they're going to get into playoffs and they're going to do well. But they're also talking about the fact that Giannis seems to be unhappy with where they are right now. I think he had hoped for more support from the franchise, and I think that's an issue. We'll see how that monitors out and keep an eye on it. There was some talk about him going to the Knicks. I don't know what the Knicks would have to give up in order to make that happen, but that would be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Detroit Pistons, another really, really surprised team. You got to maybe think of Jerome Allen as coach of the year, the way this whole thing has gone, the way they've elevated. They were in dead last year. I mean, they were really, really bad. They set records in NBA futility. I remember 18, 19-game losing streaks.
Yeah.
And for them to have turned it around in this 1 year with very little additional personnel. Cade Cunningham is a great story there, really having a monster year. The Clippers are hardening, as you say. They're starting to set a little bit in their ways. Pretty good record for them, but they have been higher than this. They stayed a little closer. If you look at now the distance between them and the Lakers, it means that the Lakers have risen and the Clippers have kind of fallen. They were neck and neck in this 15 for a really long time there.
Yep.
Minnesota Timberwolves, they're starting to show a little bit. They've played well, but, man, that trade really didn't do them solid. And the bottom here, Golden State Warriors and the Mavericks, I bet, I don't want to say next week, Pete, but maybe in 2 weeks you won't see the Dallas Mavericks there if things continue. They've got some really, really rough injury issues, and the team just does not seem to have positively responded to the trade because I don't even think Anthony Davis has played. I think he went into one game and then declared himself hurt and has been out. A little bit of shaking going on there. I don't know. I don't expect the Mavericks to be able to hold that. We'll see who comes up. These are all teams right now that we consider OOP, Pete. That's out of the playoffs. OOP, yeah, you know me. But right now, these teams are out of the playoffs, and that's a bit surprising. Phoenix Suns find themselves minus 2.5 games in the playoff hunt. San Antonio, minus 4.5 games. No Greg Popovich for the rest of the year due to a stroke. No Victor Wembanyama due to deep vein thrombosis. That's going to be rough.
That's just a double whammy for them.
That's a big hit. That's a really, really big hit, especially on the Wembanyama front because Popovich has been out for a while. They kind of settled and got used to that. And you also have the 76ers, a team that everybody thought would challenge for the Eastern Conference this year. They're going to give the Celtics a lot of trouble. They're going not at all. They're 2.5 out of the Eastern Conference, and the Eastern Conference pretty tepid and pretty soft right now. Pete, we're going to slip into our Buster Poindexter segment. Hot, hot, hot. And again, who's not hot? But again, we didn't look at this last night, so we did this the day before. Warriors won 4 in a row. Denver, very, very hot. They're on a 9-1 win streak right now, and they've really been hot. They had won 8 or 9 in a row. The Pelicans, Pete, they've won 2 in a row. Watch out. Watch out for the Pelicans. Pistons won 7 in a row, and they're 8-2 in their last 10. Celtics have won 6 in a row. Cavaliers have won 8 in a row. The top of the East is starting to take off, Pete. Who's not hot? The Humbug Hornets. They've lost 3 in a row. 76ers, they have lost 8 in a row, Pete. The Spurs have lost 3, and the Clippers have lost 3. Right now, in the zone, we want to keep you updated. Our NBA MVP race, we're going with 4 choices for you right now. We will trim them down as the year goes through. SGA, this is not in any preference order at all. SGA from the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, absolutely in the mix. The Joker, you can't average a triple-double and not be in the mix for MVP. That's our rule on In the Zone. Donovan Mitchell carrying the Cleveland Cavaliers to a great, great successful year. Kind of been in the shadows a little bit. Keep an eye on Mr. Mitchell. And Giannis doing great things. For the Coach of the Year, that's an interesting one as well, too, because I got Mark Daigneault and Kenny Atkinson back and forth, Cavaliers and OKC Thunder. Daigneault had a pretty good team. That's why I throw in Jerome Allen of the Pistons, because Daigneault had a good team. Everybody knows they were going to be good. So for him, for Coach of the Year, I guess he could be considered, but I'm looking for somebody that's really, really done something amazing. And I would go with Taylor Jenkins also of the Memphis Grizzlies. I know he's not on everybody's chart, but look how well they've done. Look how well they've done. All right, Pete, let's slip right into a little bit of Luka news. All right? Luka did the Mavericks dirty on his first return with the team. There was a lot of bad feeling about this trade. I get this. All right? And the way it went down, the way that some of it finished, and the way that some of the ancillary trades that were going on at the time finished and went down, it would make you go, But Luka is going to have to see the Mavericks at some point because they're both Western Conference teams. The Lakers win 107-99, but Pete, Luka hung a triple-double on his old team, and that's got to sting. That's got to sting. 19, 15, and 12, 12 assists. Kyrie and Clay combined for a minus 30 on an efficiency. Kyrie, minus 20. Clay, Kyrie minus 10, Klay Thompson minus 20. Another episode of Defense is in the morgue, Pete, in the NBA morgue. Memphis 151, the Suns 148. 200, I say it again, 299 combined points, Pete.
Hey, they almost bowled a perfect game.
You would sit there and say, oh my God, defense is dead. But I say to you, it's been dead. It's been dead for a long time. And here's what we're going to tell you. You would sit there, fans of In the Zone, and say 299 points. And you might sit there and go, that's way too high. And you would sit there and go, that has to be a record. That has to be the most points ever scored. Nope, it's not. And it's not even close. But this one was at least triple overtime. 1983, 370 points scored in an NBA game. The Pistons, 186. The Nuggets, 184. Those are both 1 and 2 of all time. That game, as I said, at least we can say that it went triple overtime. That's the good thing. Pete, let's slide. Let's glide right into NCAA work. We're moving and grooving today, Pete. Moving and grooving today. NCAA's got a lot going on. All right? A lot going on. All right? Why is Auburn number one right now? I'll give you a couple of really good, salient reasons why. Number one, their schedule. They have absolutely gone through it. And they also play, and you don't have to take my word for it, take John Calipari's word for it when he says the SEC is the best basketball conference of all time. I'm not sure that I disagree with that. I'm looking at this conference all year, and everybody was Big 12, and the Big 10 was getting a lot of mention. But man, oh man, this once known football conference has now come out and become football, basketball dominant. And what you could surmise from that, Pete, what you can surmise from that is they got the NIL train running down in the SEC, baby. They got the NIL money train running down in the SEC.
The biggest bags are in the SEC, right?
Let me give you a few. It's got to be. It's got to be the way the football goes. You know, they just do such an amazing job down there with their football programs. I mean, they're juggernauts. You know, they do make a lot of money. No question about it. Yeah. But let me give you a couple of other reasons Auburn's number one. Their schedule, obviously, they went and played everybody and won a lot of those games. One of their losses is to Duke this year, who's number 2 in the country. You know, so that gives you some valuation on the program. But also I wanted to talk about their coach, Bruce Pearl, a minute. All right? He has been very, very outspoken about some different issues at different times. Some of the issues I've aligned with, some of them not. But I respect his courage, you know, to speak out on those issues because I think one of the things that's happened in this country that's been a little deleterious to all of us is we haven't really learned, or we have learned, but we've kind of forgotten how to communicate with each other and how to respect each other's communications. You know, and in normal times, a guy like Bruce Pearl will come out and say what he said. You know, they might come after him and go after him. So he knew that when he was making those comments that he was making. And that's why I say they were courageous, because he knew that angry mob might come after him, that faceless, angry mob that's in this country right now might come after him. And I applaud him for that, for standing up, speaking his values, speaking his truth, and allowing it to be exactly what it is, his truth. But I think that type of leadership and his coaching, I mean, he absolutely, if you've ever watched him coach, man, he is in on every single possession. He's talking to the ref. He's talking to the players. He's talking to everybody out there, and he is invested 100% in that game in a way that's kind of unique. And, you know, it's nice to see, you know, because he really, really throws his heart and soul into what he's doing out there coaching. And as a coach, I respect that so much. You know, I really, really do. And with his players, you know, this is the team that also had their plane turned around, Pete, earlier in the year, right?
Yeah,
that time when they were messing around on a plane and whatever happened.
Well, you thought the chemistry was just shot.
You would think that, the program might be out of control a little bit, and so to turn up, 26-2 with the schedule they've had and with some of the constraints they've had. I mean, managing the locker room right now is one of the reasons that the coaches are leaving. All right. You started paying the players, but their effort got worse.
Yeah.
You started paying the players and their attitudes got worse. And so that's what the coaches have to deal with. And that was the unintended consequence that went along with this.
Well, part of what the coaches used to be able to leverage was if you play good, you get the NBA contract. Now they don't have that leverage anymore because they're still getting the money.
You already have a contract.
Yeah.
And the game used to be when the NIL started was come to our program because we're playing the long game. And the long game is what you just alluded to, Pete, the NBA, the big contract. And believe me, the NBA still is dwarfing what they're doing in college.
Sure, yeah.
Right? You got Jaylen Brown makes $50 million.
Too much.
That's more than the entire program. Right? Yeah. I think it's too much too. But that's more than an entire NIL budget for one player. So the money still is at the NBA level, but it does kind of help players stick around a little bit more, maybe get better, and maybe have a better chance at increasing their NBA chances. But what I've said all along on this, the longer sometimes you stick around, the longer you get exposed. And when the NCAA implemented the one and done rule, it sounded really good because it rhymed. And that's sometimes how you really got to pay attention to this stuff. Because one and done was done just for the NBA. It had no value for the NCAA other than to make it begin to look like a pro league or a stopover league for people who are getting ready to go to the pros. That's what it made it look like.
Yeah.
And so you're there now, right? That was the precursor to it. Now you're there, and now you're in a pro league. Now you have a pro situation. And I think that, they're going to – the problem is that they don't have pro-level agreements in place also. Collective bargaining, they're not unionized. There's a lot of stuff that's going on there that's going to watch. You're going to watch a lot of these players. I think it's happened already. They're going to get screwed,
Yep.
But what I told you on this show also, and this is the thing that people really need to keep an eye on, and this is where I'm going to throw this out for everybody for some bait, okay? Put it on your hook if you want and go. But right now, you have the University of New Orleans has 4 of their basketball players being investigated for gambling.
Oh, boy.
And they have now, I'm pretty sure they're in consideration or have done, shut down the program for the entire year. Now, the first thing that pops into my mind, and I'm sorry that my brain works like this sometimes, but the first thing that pops into my mind is, are they just a scapegoat? Is this just the fall program? You got some little program out in New Orleans nobody ever heard of. We're going to grab them up, and we're going to make an example out of them to show everybody we're working on this, to show everybody we have diligence, to show everybody we have enforcement, when actually, my guess is this thing's way out of control. This thing's way,
you can't spank a top
out of control. Jonte Porter and now this, it's not limited to that.
You can't spank a top 10 team because it would look too bad for the NCAA overall. I mean, whatever school Calipari's coaching at right now is probably the leading candidate. But, that's just sour grapes on my part. But, these top 10 schools, it's going on all over the place. But they're just going to make somebody example that they can slap around and go, you're bottom half of the 300, so yeah, just go away.
That's the first place my brain went. That was the first place my brain went, is that this is widespread. I thought it would become widespread when you started to pay the players. And now you have all of these contingency and proposition bets that can be placed on a player, and the player can easily impact that bet, because it's very, very difficult for one player to impact the total game.
Yep.
it's very, very difficult for one referee, without looking a little bit on the other side of midnight, able to impact a game. That's what Donaghy said when they were talking to him about all the stuff that he did. He would just, he would say it's not that easy, to publicly be on television and do that. So it's not that easy to do that. It's real easy to do it when you have a prop bet.
Yeah, especially if it's not like out of the ordinary for a player to say score 20 points a game and the prop bet is like 25. It's where it's not too far to their range. You know what I mean?
Right. And, and there's bets on everything. There's bets on, how many three-pointers will be made. What's the over and under at halftime? I mean, that's how you can influence things.
Yep.
When you get them down into that microcosm, that's when they can be heavily influenced. And if you look at the model of what they've uncovered already, Pete, you're talking about a prop bet with this guy in the NBA who was telling his friends they got a number on me for 3 over three-pointers. I'm going home in the first quarter with a groin injury. There's no way in heaven that I'm going to attempt or make 3 three-pointers. And that's how the betting went. And that's how they found them, because of all the action that, now they can see all the action. They can see where it's going. So you grabbed up Temple. They're under investigation right now. UNO is going under investigation right now. If they don't include some of the bigs in this, it's going to look just like it is, because we're going to be forced to believe, just like in the old days when a lot of those programs said they weren't dropping bags but got great players anyway. They're asking you to defy reality here, and they're asking you to say, well, yeah, the guys on UNO did it, and Jonte Porter, we caught him just in time, but no, it's never happening up on that level. And that's the cognitively dissonant crap that they push out to people that makes people lose interest. Pete, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Does this mean that the NCAA is only years behind the NBA? In terms of what their play looks like, in terms of NCAA ratings? If this happens to the NCAA, that's what's happening to the NBA, where do they go for their money?
Well, here's the thing. Right now, you're on the precipice because the NBA product is so bad. If the NCAA can show any modicum of authenticity, they'll get the money that the NBA once had, because the NBA will drop to be a second-tier league. And the NCAA, with the number of teams and number of tournaments and things like that, will eclipse the NBA for popularity because people want the authenticity. If it takes the NCAA slapping around a few schools and maybe even a big school to make that happen, they'll do it all day and twice on Sunday.
I'll give you the words of the great Jerry Tarkanian, great coach at UNLV. They went after UNLV and investigated them left and right, and left everybody else pretty much alone. We're going after Tarkanian. We're going after Tarkanian. He became the NCAA's bad guy, And Jerry Tarkanian made a great quote one time. He said the NCAA got so mad at Kentucky, they put Cleveland State on probation.
Hey, you need a heel. And I can't think of a bigger heel in the NCAA than Calipari.
You do. You have to have a villain. You got to have a villain. They've kind of made, that's kind of the beauty of that guy also, though. I mean, if anybody, has a good feeling for him, the people around him like the guy for sure. He's into it as well, too. But as much as he's been involved with, up until like recently, with all the social media stuff coming out and all the different things that come at you that way, he kind of been able to, have this halo up on his head, but the bag he was carrying had a lot of the devil's tools in it, so he's been able to skirt that a little bit. I'm not so sure anymore.
He's been like that since UMass.
I'm not so sure anymore, but now they've legalized it, Pete, so there are no more bad guys, really. You're going to have to really search for your bad guys. And I think they're going to find that in the gambling for him.
He's the heel because he's calling it as he sees it. He's finally speaking out, saying, "Hey, this is how I see it," and he's still now the heel.
Right, but everybody in our game sees him as one of the greatest hypocrites of all time right
Yeah.
now, because he was on the forefront of all the stuff that led us to this. He was on the forefront of all of that stuff back in the day that made all of the coaches up on that level follow the Piper, all of the coaches up on that level slicking their hair back, the Armani Mafia, I used to refer to them as, and they went into the game and they did a lot of damage to the game. And now they're the same guys who lit the house on fire going, I got the water. I got the water. You don't. Sit this one out, big guy. Pete, throw my 25 back up there for me because we're in the middle of it. I apologize for that segue.
That's why I went full screen.
But no, I appreciate that, Pete. You got moves like Jagger. We got Duke going in the number 2 spot, and I want to say I really have watched this team all year long. I'm going to say maybe 10 times I've seen this team. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. They're really, really in. I like what Shire's doing. Tyrese Proctor has been hurt. If that continues, that's a problem because he's been really, really good for them. But, you know, with Cooper Flagg, the big three they have, I got to give them their due. And I got to give Coach Shire his due. I don't think that's a model that has a lot of success. Taking a coach who has never, ever been a head coach before in his life and putting them into one of the top 25, 40 programs in the country. That level of success is not strong. Numbers bear it out. Juwan Howard, Patrick Ewing, Jerry Stackhouse, possibly Hubert Davis, you know, and some others that got into the job, you know, when there might have been a lot of other resumes out there that were available. I don't mind people starting out in Division I and getting good jobs, but to start at that top level and never, ever have coached before in your life, it's really, really not a great formula for success in the years that I've been watching it. Kudos to Coach Shire. I think Duke was the place it could happen, if it was to happen. But Jai Lucas now going to Miami, I think you're seeing it at Green Bay with Gottlieb. It has some success, but I think for the most part, it hasn't been. And then if you're looking at what happens after that, let's look at Vanderbilt. Stackhouse goes. They take Mark Byington from James Madison, and they're right back cooking with gasoline right now. You get Pat Kelsey to come out of college at Charleston, take over a moribund, and I mean flat on its back Louisville program. They're second in the ACC right now behind Duke. He's got to be given consideration for National Coach of the Year as well. But coaching matters. You look at Dusty May, went from Florida Atlantic, took over for Juwan Howard. Flat on its back, the program. They had been starting fights with people on the sidelines, all sorts of different problems. Head coach had been suspended at different times. Now you go in and you enter into Dusty May, and Michigan is in the top of the Big Ten. Top of the Big Ten. So coaching matters. Florida, Coach Golden, 24-3. Another guy should be given Coach of the Year consideration. Doing a great, great job over there. Houston has no problem as long as they have Kelvin Sampson. This gentleman has maintained that program in the top. I would say, I said it before, Danny Hurley, Kelvin Sampson, and Matt Painter. If you're looking for 3 names in the last 5 years of coaches who've absolutely eclipsed the pack, they've taken it over. All right, Alabama, excuse me, 22-5. I watched this team. I watched them the other night. And I think it was Mississippi State. I was anxious to watch the game because I think Mississippi State's pretty good. Alabama dismantled them. When they're going good, they're really, really good. Here's my rub on Alabama. They have gone to the three-point ball more than almost any major program has, meaning either it's a dunk at the basket or a layup at the basket or they're shooting a three. They're spacing the floor like crazy. And I think they got great athletes on this team, and that limits some of them around the basket, you know. So I think that if they shoot well in the tournament and get hot, it could be good. But when you have that formula, and I say this to my team as well too, it only takes one bad game for you to shoot poorly, and you're going to be cooked unless your defense can handle that. Speaking of defense, let's talk about St. John's, Pete. Second game against UConn in the Garden. Great matchup. Everybody was ready for it. The Garden is back in St. John's territory right now. They are packing the Garden. They are rocking the Garden. And by virtue of the Seton Hall game being moved out of Carnesecca Hall into the Garden, that shows you the Rick Pitino factor. Year 2 for Coach Pitino, he's got it cooking. If you want to see some really good locker room stuff, check out some of the stuff he's been saying to his team in the locker room. Follow it up with Talik Brown, his assistant coach, and you'll know why St. John's is playing at the level that they are. Michigan State, 23-5. They threw an absolute bomb in last night, Pete, to beat Maryland. I'm talking, they're on the road. I think it was 55-55. Kind of a low-scoring affair. Kid from Maryland, Gillespie, I believe it was, comes down. We're talking maybe 5 seconds on the clock. Takes a three-pointer trying to win the game. It doesn't go in, but comes off the rim hard and long. Guy from Michigan State picks it up, takes 1, maybe 2 dribbles into about 60-foot range, lets it fire, and boom. And this was at Maryland. So it was almost like the whole building just went silent at one moment. And it was like you could see Michigan State celebrating, the only ones in the building celebrating. But that's the type of thing that can turn your team on too.
Yeah, I can.
60-foot bomb from way downtown. Tennessee, 22-5. Got a good team. They got a great backcourt. They got to shoot the ball well. And Barnes alluded to that. They benched Chaz Lanier because he wasn't shooting the ball. And Barnes, I thought, was, maybe it was a little bit, ironic, but he says, hey, you're getting paid now. You're getting paid to shoot the ball. Shoot the ball. St. Mary's, Pete, we were worried about them going into Gonzaga. A lot of talk that I'm hearing about Coach Few maybe being Gonzaga because their program is, getting swallowed up in all of this, and Mark Few very, very easily walks out the door into just about any program that he wants to coach in right now. So keep your eye on that, folks. He's been very loyal to Gonzaga over the years, but that's before all of this stuff started.
Yeah, but if he doesn't know how to handle the NIL, he's not good anywhere.
And it's not just about knowing how to handle it. It's about the size of the bag right now.
Yeah.
Gonzaga is not going to – they're a small school without football. They're
right.
Never going to have a big bag unless he's out, going to guys, every day of the week trying to raise the money, So that's what the whole thing's going to come down to. This whole thing, as you, Pete, always flash that great graphic for us of that, just the money pouring down. It's now not only is the money in your coaching contract or the money in, your recruitment budget, the money has to be in the NIL bag because otherwise Gonzaga's not going to get the same players. Gonzaga's not going to have those same guys. They're going to have to go with WCC guys because that's the money they got in their bag. And I believe Gonzaga's a Catholic school. And if you look at some of this, I don't think they're in our top 25. I don't think they're in most top 25s right now. But if you look at this, you'll see it's affecting a lot of the Catholic schools greatly. My own alma mater, St. Bonaventure, LaSalle, St. Joseph's, all of those schools, Georgetown, Villanova. They were late. They were late to the NIL. And now you want to see if they want to support it. What's their feeling about it? You don't have a good feeling about it. You better jump in the pool. Your time for feelings is over. Now it's the time for dollars, or you're going to get left behind. That's why they're talking about making this super conference out of the ACC and the Big East. I think it's a step in the wrong direction, personally. I think it's an admission of loss, but teams are going to do what they got to do to survive at this time. Pete, Michigan State goes in with the buzzer. Tennessee, St. Mary's, really solid. Going to be good tournament teams, both of them also. Clemson, but St. Mary's went into Gonzaga and beat Gonzaga last week. That was a game we pointed out to everybody. We want to see if St. Mary's can handle that, and they did without problem. Clemson, Pete, this guy years ago, and maybe this is a message for all you bloodthirsty bystanders out there right now that are clamoring for your coach to be fired. Roll the tape back. 5 years ago, everybody was on Brad Brownell. He's got to go. He's on the hot seat. I don't think there was anybody. It's one of the reasons I don't like doing hot seat on this show, and I applaud Adam Nelson, our guest last week, for refraining from that as well. because what you have here is just conjecture. You don't know what's going to happen. And years ago, it was fire Brad Brownell. Brad Brownell is on the hot seat. Nobody's seat is hotter than Brad Brownell's. Well, right now, I got them in 10. They're second in the ACC, third in the ACC, doing a great, great job with the amount of losses they had last year as well, too. Texas Tech, Memphis, right here. They're two very good teams. People are sleeping on Memphis, Pete. A lot of people don't have them this high. I do because I like what they're doing, and they're talented. You saw what they did to UConn and Maui. I believe them. I believe them. Michigan, 13, it's what we were talking about. Dusty May, coaching, hiring, it matters. And then the support staff and what goes around that matters. What your culture looks like really, really, really matters right now. Iowa State, 21-6. Maryland, I didn't move them because of obviously they'll probably move, but I was watching this game so late, and I believe it was after that I had already sent Pete the Super 25. I didn't want to change it. I didn't want to get into it. And I really didn't want to change it because, man, they played Michigan State really, really well. That ball went in the buzzer. That's a fluke. Doesn't happen every day. Man, that's a bee sting for sure. But it's not something that's terminal. I like this Maryland team still. Wisconsin, Texas A&M. Texas A&M team, I was listening to their coach. They had him kind of mic'd up in practice, and I was listening to him. These coaches are fighting for the soul of their program every day out, because some of these guys are only thinking about pro contracts. Some of these guys are thinking about how do I get my next NIL bag. Some of these guys are thinking individually, which runs antithetical to everything that these coaches have been good at their whole lives,
right?
Which is teamwork.
Yep.
That's where we are. And I think Buzz and some of these other coaches, they talk about it after the season, where they go, we have to re-recruit our own players. We got to re-recruit them. Recruit them again. Talk them into staying. Talk them into not putting their name in the portal. Well, every single day in practice, you got to reinvigorate your team into the stuff that you want as a coach, because I got news for you. They don't want it. Right now, in the game, they don't want it. Missouri, Louisville, 18-19. Kelsey, again, coaching matters, took over for a program that was flat on its back in 1 year. Good NIL bag, no doubt, but it's still 1 year, and the people in Louisville are going dancing. Missouri, done a very good job here. This guy would have been hot seat candidate early in the year. No question, he would have been on the hot seat. Marquette, Shaka, they got beat up a little bit last week, but he does a good job with his team. I love his philosophy. I like the way he keeps them grounded, but again, challenges and pushes the team. But right now, it's so hard. It's so hard. You watch some of the teams and some of the games, you're paying the money more than ever before, and the effort is lower than it ever has been. San Diego State. Now, that's UC San Diego. There's also San Diego with Coach Lavin, Steve Lavin, and they're not doing well.
That's the Aztecs,
That's
right?
it. Yeah, those guys are Aztecs or San Diego State.
San Diego State, yeah.
They're next. But then there's just San Diego. That's 4-24, and that's Lavin's team, former St. John's coach. Utah State, I leave them in. Nobody's got these guys in, 24-4. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Nobody wants to see this team in the NCAA tournament. Nobody. Ditto number 25, Drake. 4 Division II players brought up from a Division II school, from Ben McCollum, who finally got a shot in D1. I'm leaving them in the top 25. They're 25-3, and they're doing it with 4 of his Division II players. Sounds like St. Thomas Aquinas and FDU, baby. Keep an eye on Drake. They might knock somebody out. All right, here's a few algorithm atrocities, Pete. Ken Palm. And you hear in the background the Jackson 5 playing Never Can Say Goodbye, because they just hold on to some of these guys like for dear, dear life. They have Gonzaga's number 9. They have 8 losses. They lost to St. Mary's. St. Mary's is in front of them in the league by like 2.5 games now. They got St. Mary's at 18. St. Mary's is 25-4. Come on. How does that work? Arizona, 13. They're 18-9. NFW, no way. Illinois, 22. 18-11. 11 losses, and they're in the top 25. In what country? Not this one. Kansas, 21-9. Toto ain't in Kansas anymore, Pete. 21th, they got them at 19-9. We already talked about the UNO thing. We'll move on. All right. Home is where the cash is, Pete. That's what we're going to call this one. Home is where the cash is. Now, here's something as we get ready for Selection Sunday. Okay? And I would say this to the selection committees in Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. Okay? Look at the home-away differentials of the teams that you're looking for at-large bids. We did this last year. We're going to bring it to you again. But we want the NCAA committee put on alert right now. Okay? We're watching this stuff. And when you got 10 cannolis and you haven't left Boca for a month and a half, we think that should factor in to Coastal Carolina, who might be fighting for their lives every single day that they step out. Columbia, who plays a schedule that's balanced. All right, this is where we're going to get into this, Pete. All right, these are all, excuse me, these are all really kind of power conference things.
Yeah, and again, these guys pad their schedules. They rain the cash around so they can build up wins. And there's teams out there still doing 25-4.
Right, and this is what I want. This is what I want to put the NCAA committee on alert to: Division 1, 2, and 3. Okay, they're counting what they do. They count the wins of Quad 1. Well, if you look at North Carolina's Quad 1 wins, you're probably not going to put them in, but they're going to put North Carolina in no matter what because they want North Carolina in. Let me give it to you this way. Okay, you can't have that much inherent advantage and say that you're doing this mathematically, because the advantages are there, and I'm going to give it to you a couple of times right here. I'll give you a quick 10 of them. All right, SMU in the ACC. They are now. Let me differentiate here for 1 second for our fans as well too. Okay, you're going to have teams that win their tournament. They get an automatic qualifier. They're in the NCAA tournament by virtue of winning the tournament. No issue with any team that does that. You go all the way through. Now the committee gets in their room. They send up the conclave smoke. The papal selection begins. They're shrouded in secrecy. And every single year, they don't look at these very, very objective facts. Fact number 1, they got fat on cannolis. They got fat on cupcakes. Fact number 2, their home-away differential is way, way out of skew, okay? When you only play in 30 games and you got an 8-game margin between home and away, that will never go away now. Once you establish that home-away margin, once you're up +8, you're going to go away. Once you're in your league, you're going to go home. Away, home, away, home. That you will add up different sides of both sides, but you will never erase that advantage that were put on by the guarantee games and the games that you played solely at home. Now, SMU, they're going to be, this is what I'm talking about. Now you need to be an at-large selection. You didn't win the conference. You're not getting an automatic qualifier. Now you're at the mercy of the selection committee. Now, Drake, at 25-3, is going to be in danger more than North Carolina at 18-11 is going to be because of this. SMU, 16 home, 8 away. NC State, one of the biggest burglars out there, 17 home, 8 away. Stanford, 16-9. Texas Tech, 17-8. West Virginia, 16-9. Utah, 17-8. Just fired their coach, Craig Smith. St. John's, Rick Pitino, 17-8. I got an asterisk on St. John's. The reason I have an asterisk is because their home court is off in Madison Square Garden. And anybody can get tickets to Madison Square Garden. So when UConn goes into Madison Square Garden, there's a chance you're going to have a pretty split crowd there. UConn can get a lot of people to go to the Garden. So when you get Syracuse in the Garden, they don't play much anymore because they're different leagues. But when you used to get Syracuse, St. John's in the Garden, Syracuse would draw very well in that game too. So a lot of St. John's games are in Madison Square Garden. I just wanted to make that caveat, a home game nonetheless. 17-8, but they're not playing no cupcakes and they're not playing no cannolis in Madison Square Garden. I can assure you that. Villanova, 16-9. Maryland, 17-8. Iowa, 17-8. All the way down the line. Missouri, the biggest criminals of all time here in the burglar of the home away differential, 19-8. Okay? Arkansas, John Calipari, 16-8. They're 5-9 in the SEC. 5-9 in the SEC. You got all these other teams that are on the fringe. Selection committee needs to take that into account. They need to take that into account. When you're looking at some of these mid-majors, you're looking at maybe the Atlantic 10, very good conference, really, really good basketball, very competitive conference. It's really hard to win that league. Now you're going to say the number 2 team in there, maybe VCU, doesn't get a bid, while one of these others, cannoli devouring, never leave home programs gets to enjoy some algorithmic content and some comfort. I don't like it. Here's some parody going crazy for you, Pete. We're going to close with a couple of things for you. 4th time in only the last 55 years that half of the men's preseason top 10 are not ranked at all. They were ranked preseason top 5. Who were they? That's not ranked now. Was it North Carolina? Probably. Was it UConn? Probably. A couple of others out there that you could name, but those 2 come to mind. Okay? Self-serving. Kansas is out of the top 25. Now, you can look at this 2 ways. You say, wow, Kansas is out of the top 25. What's going on at Kansas? Or you can look at this for the ridiculous record of accomplishment that it is on the flip side of this. They call it Kansas out of the top 25 for the first time in 80 AP polls. 80. 1,477 days of being ranked. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Player of the year, Pete. I'm going to go Cooper Flagg, John I. Broome. Those are my 1 and 2s. I like Walter Clayton Jr., Mark Sears from Alabama. I'm going to go John Tanji also. I'm keeping him in the mix. Coach of the year, the aforementioned Bruce Pearl, John Shire. 1, 2, have to be. But consider Coach Golden from Florida because nobody thought they'd be 3rd in the country. McCollum at Drake, you got to give him a shot. And I think, if you're serious-minded, you'll give Coach Pitino a look too because of what they've done in just 2 years at St. John's. They have the biggest bag in the Big East. So some of the Catholic schools aren't having all that much trouble. But some are. Some are. And I think the ones that aren't in the Power 5 are really kind of struggling the most. The thing that I found out also is that every school has to be involved in paying the old bills. Every school has to be involved in paying the old bills, whether you go in the revenue stream or not. That's going to be taxing for a lot of these schools. All right, we're up on March Madness, Pete. March Madness facts for you here. We're coming into the tournament. Here's a couple of things. Gonzaga never has beaten a number 1 seed in the whole tournament. Interesting. Nebraska, the Cornhuskers, have never won an NCAA game. That's surprising.
Yeah.
Coach, past the age of 70, has never won the national championship. Interesting. No team from the West Coast has won since 1997. Wow. Since 1992, a number 6 team has not made the Final Four. A number 5 seed has not won the national title ever. All right. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. I got some baselines for you here, Pete, and we're going to go through them, all right? In our hot segment of the college ranks, we got about 5 minutes. I'm going to run through it for you. Buster Poindexter section in the college ranks. I think this should be, I got a few things here on my plate that I can leave for next week. But this one is where we talk about NBA teams really hot. Here's some teams that you don't talk about a lot that are hot. Vermont won 6 in a row. North Texas 4 in a row. Wichita State, very, very, very hot, 6 in a row. VCU, hot, won 7 in a row and have taken over first place in the A-10. Loyola of Chicago won last night, 5 in a row. UNC has won 4 in a row. They're trying to pump their tournament profile. Duke 5 in a row. Louisville 6 in a row. Houston 7 in a row. Xavier trying to pump their profile for the Big East. Maybe a win in a tournament or two might help them. They've won 4 in a row. The Grizzlies of Montana, Pete, 9 in a row. High Point, 10 in a row. Robert Morris, 6 in a row. Yale, Vicky Chun, my good friend down at Yale, Jason James, great coach. They have won 10 in a row and are off to a big start in the Ivy League. Wow. Who's not hot, Pete? NJIT out in Jersey, tough program. They've lost 6 in a row. Texas Southern, 6 in a row as well. UMass, they had a really bad injury to their point guard, Curry. And since that time, they've kind of been adrift. They were playing really, really good basketball with him. I thought, maybe you go back 2 shows, you'll hear me say that I thought that they were playing some of the best basketball in the A-10. They got clipped by that injury. If they can get him back, they can make some moves. But right now, they've kind of been really, really in a bad spot without him, and they've lost 4 in a row. LaSalle moves up to 6 in a row. Fordham, 5 in a row. Miami's lost 4 in a row. They've absolutely, completely folded up for the year. Cal, 4 in a row. 5 for DePaul. Here's one. Purdue, Pete, lost 4 in a row. You haven't seen that in years. Purdue has lost 4 games in a row. You have not seen that in years. They're missing the big fella inside Zach Edey. Long Beach, 11. Columbia's lost 4 in a row. They're 1-10 in the Ivy Leagues after beating Villanova at Villanova. Crazy game. The Citadel has lost 19 games in a row. Old Dominion, 6. San Diego, Steve Lavin, San Diego, 15 in a row. That's ugly. Here's a couple of baselines for you. Mississippi Valley State. We talked about them last year. They were 364 last year. Right now, they're DFL again in the 360s, doing terrible. Steve Lavin's team 4-24, 1-14 in the WCC. Miami is 2-12, 6-19 overall. They've had 14 home and 7 away. Unbelievable. All right, Pete, as we get ready for our tournament time, we get ready to go. We've been around all year. Is there anybody that's caught your fancy in this thing so far? We talked about UConn last year, talked about a few other teams. Is there anybody out there that you're saying outside this first group of Auburn, Duke, Florida, the SEC, anybody who's not in the SEC, is there anybody who's caught your attention?
I mean, I could see St. Mary's making a run. They seem to have taken that spot, that sweetheart, America's sweetheart spot that Gonzaga once had. And St. John's is making a case for themselves.
St. John's plays great defense.
They're making a case.
St. John's plays great defense. You got to watch them.
Yeah.
No doubt. They're making a case. I love that, Pete. St. Mary's also, this is something that, NIL, big bag, doesn't always mean anything. Great Osabor got paid big money. They're out in Washington. They're almost in last place. You got Coleman Hawkins, went from Illinois to Kansas State. Hasn't really improved their bag. Pete goes back to St. Mary's. They had Aiden Mahaney as one of their lead guards last year, one of the best guards they had. He came all the way over to UConn as a big portal addition. Hasn't really done well at UConn. UConn's not doing great. And you have St. Mary's out there, hasn't skipped a beat, and they're kicking it with gasoline. Unbelievable, Pete. It just goes to show you never can tell. You never can tell. At least that's what makes this still exciting. Folks, we're out of time. Fastest hour. I did want to say thank you to Adam Nelson of Hoop Dirt last week. A great show and a really, really good reaction from the fans. In the zoners, keep going. We're going to get you ready for your bracket. Going to get you ready for one of my favorite times is the postseason tournaments. People, you're in the zone. We'll see you next week.